Hey guys, how about a little unboxing action? Now these two boxes in particular are going to be the main focus of this video because they potentially relate to the blonde Zenith porthole I picked up recently and what I propose doing with it, which is something a little different. But before we do that, if Jupiter stays out of the way, let's take a look at the other boxes. So this box should be from Voice of Music, and it should have some idler wheels, some motor mounts for a couple phonographs. So I started working on, well, my buddy started working on the one for the Garrett. That's the main thing I want to get running, but while we were poking around, with record changers, I also pulled one out of my Stromberg Carlson TS16 combo set, and I figured, alright, forget the tape. While we're doing one, hey, why don't we take a look at the other one? So, should be what's in here. Yeah, so, cool. Nice. Motor mounts, cartridge. We'll talk more about that. My buddy's going to come back and we're going to resume work on the Garrett and start work on the Stromberg. Now the two big boxes down below, I'm honestly not entirely sure what's in them, so let's look at those next. This one is especially heavy, so let's start with this. What I think this is, oh, it's a double box. I think this is tubes. I had someone ask me, a viewer asked me for my address, and I believe he said he had been accumulating TV tubes and he didn't have any use for them, so I sent them over. Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. So he just threw a few numbers at me as best I recall, and yeah, they were useful. Two numbers, 6BX7, I think that's what the Zenith Flashmatic TV uses in the remote receiver. Yeah, 6SL7. That's a lot of the electrostatic TVs use it for vertical deflection. 6BQ6 for horizontal output tube. Jupiter, what are you doing? And 5U4. Sorry, my little dog is just trying to run around frantically. I don't think he likes these boxes being in the way. Or maybe he wants to know what's inside of them. Backtron. There's definitely TV tubes. There's a nice Motorola old school 1B3 high voltage rectifier. So we got a whole mess of those. Let's take a look in the other box. Thank you very much for these. I am sure I will find a good use for them. And kudos to you for a good packing job. These are box tubes. Gander, what we have, 6W4 damper, a couple of those. Definitely use those. High voltage rectifiers. Output tubes. So, yeah, 3A3, 6BQ6s. Very mainstream. Definitely tubes I use on a regular basis. So, cool. Alright, so let's get to the two main boxes I want to talk about. Oh, I think a little doggy's freaked out because we got a storm rolling in. Oh, poor doggy. Alright, so when I start a project, these TV projects you see me do all the time, I typically take a look at the chassis, look at the service info, and figure out what I'm going to need. I'll look through the parts I have. I typically stock the common value capacitors, but inevitably there's some stuff I need to order, especially power resistors. Now, if you recall, on that Zenith porthole, which is essentially the same chassis as one I did last year, it has a lot of power resistors, and if that one that I did last year has any indication, they're all going to be bad. If you go back and watch that video, they were visibly corroded, they're falling apart, so I need to replace them. Now, what I've done in the past, usually do, is I go to Mauser, DigiKey, some modern parts vendor, and order new ones, like silicon-coated modern power resistors. But it got me thinking a couple things. One, that chassis looks to be 100% original underneath. So I'm not crazy about tearing it apart, throwing in modern, like those aluminum housed chassis mount power resistors, or the modern silicon coated ones, or even modern vitreous enamel, unless the old ones look the same style. Or I could go maybe onto eBay or Surplus Sales in Nebraska, or various parts vendors, or a Hamfest even, and find vintage parts that are good and put those in there and try to retain as much originality as possible. So there are a couple vintage part vendors that I like to use on eBay. This is one of them, Tuber. Actually, we go way back. He's the guy who brought me those lovely color roundy TVs last year. He's out on the East Coast, and he deals, amongst other things, in vintage electronics. So I got some parts from him. He also had some controls and a sound discriminator coil. Eventually I'll get around to my Emerson set, the 571 that somebody had butchered, and I want to try to restore it to what it was originally like. And sure look like it's a transformer that I'm going to need. This guy, a 21.25 megahertz discriminator transformer, should be TV IF frequency, audio IF frequency in these vintage TVs. So that, got some controls and power resistors like these. So most of the ones, actually maybe all the ones I got, are this type. And for sure some of the ones in that Zenith are like this. In particular there's one that's chassis mounted like so. We'll take a look at the chassis in a little bit. Now a bunch of them are also sand coated. And those are the ones that really get corroded and fall apart. They don't make those anymore. Probably because they get corroded and fall apart. So those I will concede that I will use this type. It's still a vintage resistor, but no, it's not 100% the same package style as the old type. But it is a type that was available back when it was made, so I feel comfortable we're not destroying the originality too much by doing that. But they all, I imagine, have to get replaced. Nice Philco control, like they use in predictors. Same type of knob shaft on there. So that's some of the, oh yeah, should also be one other goodie here which really got me going on placing this order. There should be a new old stock CRT base. Here we go. Nice 14 pinner. This is what you're going to find in the electrostatics TVs using a 7JP4. They sometimes use really cheap sockets and they're falling apart, the pins rip out and you take it off the base. This is a nice new old stock high quality one. So I'm sure I'll need that someday. So we got some power resistors, we got some controls, we got a coil. So now he didn't have everything I needed, so I went to another seller that I also like to use, which is Barno Electronics. He was also having a sale, and he had a whole mess of power resistors. And what really got me going with this guy is, so I mentioned I got some color roundy sets last fall. Well, I've looked at the alignment instructions for those, and there was one crazy step that I did a little bit of a double take, but I looked further, asked around, and said, yeah, it's what you need. You need a 100-watt power resistor. Well, I don't stock 100-watt power resistors. I think 2K 100-watt power resistor to be exact. But this guy had one, so I ordered one. The reason you need it is kind of interesting. Boy, this thing is just a ball of tape. Pardon me while I try to get this open. Alrighty, I think we're making progress here. Boxes inside the boxes. Alright. Thinking this big wad here might be that huge power resistor. But between these two guys, I think I got every power resistor I need. Which leads me to a much trickier situation. I can't fault somebody for packing something well, but I do sometimes get a little annoyed by using half a mile of tape to wrap up something. I mean, it's wrapped up, it's in a box. Like, it's not going anywhere. We don't need to keep wrapping and wrapping and wrapping. But he's a good guy. He has a lot of great stuff. He gave me a very fair price on the shipping, so shouldn't criticize. And also, to be fair, these vitreous enamel resistor ceramic power resistors, they are kind of fragile. I think you've seen me get them new from Mauser, where they're in a huge wad of bubble wrap. We're getting there. We're getting there. There it is. Ohmite has the answer. And products for today and tomorrow's circuitry. I've never seen one this large. 50 watts are the biggest I get, but there you go. There is a 100-watt power resistor. So why the heck do you need a 100-watt power resistor to align a TV? The reason is simple. When you align a color TV, a roundy, the roundy picture tube is going to stay in the cabinet, and you're going to pull the chassis out, and you're going to want to align it. You're going to want to kill the high voltage, so you pull the horizontal output tube out. Problem is, you're removing a big load from the power supply. To simulate that, you connect this between B plus and ground. And I worked out the math, and yeah, it dissipates 40 to 50 watts. And the rule of thumb is you double it, so that's why it's a 100-watt resistor. So yeah, this goes right across it to simulate the load of having the full horizontal deflection circuit, picture tube hooked up, and all that good stuff. Which, yeah, if you can do an alignment without having that hooked up, makes life so much easier. So, one of these days, I'll get around to doing that. Well, the rest of these, while I was at it, I ordered up a few things. Should be some terminal strips, but mostly power resistors. Maybe some tube sockets. Had to kind of restrain myself because it's so much good stuff. And the prices are so great. I mean, look at all these terminal strips I got. And they're the good vintagey kind. Phenolic. Lots of lugs. Good cinch branded. I don't know, I mean, each one of these packs was like $4 or $5 or something. Which is way less than you're gonna find at one of the boutique tube amp places. And here we get power resistors. Yes, yeah, it's been a while since I looked at these. So some of these are also, well, this is another old school type, which is ceramic, but it's not vitreous. It's sort of white looking, and that's I think some of the Zenith are like that. And yeah, these are basically all enameled power resistors. More little box here. So the other thing is the capacitors. So sure, we can restuff the electrolytic cans. I haven't done that in a while, but I've certainly done it before, and it's people do it all the time. But that chassis, yes, so that's nice and Ohmite still in the package. But there are also bumblebees of two varieties. We got the classic black ones with the bumblebee stripes on them. But we've also got these white kind of really hard plastic, ceramic-y looking ones, almost like the ends are filled with cement. Those I'm a little more concerned about. So, what I propose doing is we restore it, make it look as authentic as possible. We keep as many carbon copy resistors as we can. If I got to replace some, I'll replace them with some old ones that are close enough and the right value. And we use all these lovely vintage power resistors, and we do something about the bumblebees. Perhaps we try drilling them out. Perhaps we try cracking them in half. Perhaps we take new ones and make them look like old ones. That's what we're going to explore next. I'm going to pull out the chassis. We'll take a fresh look at it. I do regret I've tossed a lot of capacitors over the years. I should be able to dig up some spare bumblebees we can experiment with. And here's the chassis I've been talking about. So let's review what I am proposing to do. So these are the guys that have to go. So the new power resistors I got, yes, they're this type, they're this type, and these are the sand-coated ones that I'll replace with vintage resistors, but they're not going to be the sand-coated type. They just are not reliable. Like I said, they don't make them anymore, and that is why. Not the best material choice. And yes, some of them are this style, so there's another one. So I can replace that with something that looks just like that. So actually, when I'm done, they'll all look like this. So they're period correct, and they'll all be the same type. They just won't necessarily be exactly the same type as what was there. Alright, so capacitors, that's the big issue. So you may think these are power resistors. No, cap, cap, cap. These are these white ones I've been talking about. You can get a better look at it here. So it actually looks like it's molded, and all the way on one end to where there's a little hole for the lead. It's not like sealed up. That's actually all one continuous piece. And this end is the one that's plugged up with something. And this one's cracked in half. See, that's going to be another problem, which makes me lean kind of towards fabricating or disguising or like painting new ones rather than trying to reuse these. Because I know some of them are cracked or split open. Here's a Black Beauty. And this is made from two halves, and I don't know if they glued them, fused them together somehow, but these also tend to develop cracks as they go bad. This one is cracked or opening up on the seams. So I saw one guy online doing it. There's not a whole lot out there because I think a lot of people concluded it's not worth the time, effort, or it's not really even feasible to do. But he put it in the lathe, and he slowly worked out and opened up an end and put a new cap inside. But in doing so, he ended up essentially removing one end because his drill bore ended up being so large it just completely took the end off. Which got me thinking, if I was going to try to restuff these rather than trying to split them along the seams and then glue it back together without breaking it, or drill out one end completely, just cut an end off very near the end. And then the inside is just a paper wax cap, and put a new cap inside and plug up the end with black hot glue. That's a possibility. These guys I think are less likely, but we'll experiment. But there is a brand of capacitors out there. Unlike the yellow ones, these guys, I was clued in by a viewer that there's a brand that just radio sells. I'll include a link, some photos, that are black and tubular and similar size to this, and they're high quality, at least that's what it looks like, but they're not that expensive. Now, if I took those, even if I just leave them black, they're not bad looking. They look better than bright yellow. And I imagine if one was to put it on like some slow moving lathe or rig something up, you paint stripes onto them. They do have a logo on it. It could maybe sand it off or just paint the whole thing over with black and then paint stripes on it. I think it ended up looking pretty close to this. If you really want to be authentic, one end of these, I guess that's the seal end, has kind of a blob nodule. You could probably simulate that with just a solder blob, or a little bit of brass tubing slid over the lead or something like that. Now for these guys, I could probably take those same caps and paint them off-white. This is kind of an odd color. It's hard to describe. I don't know if you even call it off-white. Pale. And then paint stripes under those too. If one really wanted to retain that look. And then a final challenge, two other challenges. There are one or two, a couple more up here. Tubular paper-covered electrolytic caps. I could probably get axial electrolytic caps and carefully recover the cardboard encasing, or clean or cut open one end of the aluminum housing and get a new cap inside there. And then there's these guys. I believe there are two. There were two on the other side I worked. Oh yeah, there it is. It's hiding down here. This guy and this. They look like huge mica caps, right? Pretty darn sure they're paper caps inside, because they're like 10,000 picofarad. It's just too big for a mica cap. So how would you hide a paper cap or make one look like that? Well, a plastic film cap. Let's see, but you can't get these Mallory white ones anymore either. So these are the yellow ones I usually get. But there is another type, which are the flat ones, made in a different way. These aren't rolled up. These are built up of sheets stacked up like a deck of cards. But it's flat, so you could probably manipulate the leads. And if one could bust one of those open, you could probably fit this inside. Or make a mold from that. Take some type of putty or molding material and hide one of these caps inside and make a mold out of it. Paint it brown, paint on the colored dots if you really wanted to. And if you want to go to that extreme. Another possibility is, well, compromise and we'll make a Black Beauty looking cap and replace that. Why are these two mica looking? Best I could conclude when I worked on the other chassis is those are used in more critical circuits, and at the time they thought that these would be more reliable or more precise or better, some characteristics would be better. But it ended up not being the case. Similarly, why there's some Black Beauties and why there's some of these pale caps. Why didn't they just go with one vendor for all of them? Don't know. I couldn't find any real rhyme or reason to why they used one type in one area and another type in another area, because you see some of them side by side in the same circuit. So it might simply have been, at the time, rushed to get TVs out. It might have been harder to secure parts, so maybe they used multiple vendors to get all of what they needed, and that's all that it comes down to. But yeah, there's the challenge. Resistors I'm less concerned about. They still make carbon comps, at least a half-watt size. The 2 watters can get, and 1 watters can get a little expensive if you go to the boutique places, because people are making new tube audio amps, and they sometimes want to make them look authentic, or they're restoring a vintage amp and they want it to look authentic. So I've seen some of these 2 watt guys go for $5-10 a pop. I do have some. Maybe it won't be that big an issue. If you look, most of these are 10%, some are 20%. But my experience has shown that they can be off by like 50%, and unless you're using some test equipment, you wouldn't notice the difference. So, if any of you have ever attempted to restuff a bumblebee or recreate one, or have any thoughts on how to do it, I'd be interested in hearing from you. Here's some other thoughts I had. I could get some hobby tubing, plastic tubing, and maybe I can even get it something close enough to this color or black, put a yellow cap inside, and paint stripes on it. So rather than taking a cap like this and painting it black and all that, make a tube that's the same diameter as the old one, hide this inside, and make it look like this. In other words, don't even attempt to reuse these at all. But as I believe somebody commented a while ago, the only way you're really going to get this look is to really restuff them somehow. And I can tell you, it's not going to be 100% perfect. Not that I've ever seen. I busted open a few of these just because I was curious to see what was inside. The hope being, oh, you apply a little pressure, it'll crack right along the seam when they originally made it. No, it holds pretty well. They end up just kind of shattering. And if you cut an end off and put one inside and seal up the end with black epoxy or black hot glue, it's not going to be perfect. If somebody looks close, they would see the end was resealed. Let's compare some of these new old resistors to what's in here now. I think that's a pretty darn good match. Yeah, the other one has like riveted lugs on it, and this one is spot welded, but otherwise it's the same. And this vertically mounted guy, yeah, the new one's a little bit fatter. It's probably slightly higher wattage, but otherwise they're the same length. I can reuse the same mounting stuff. Close enough for me. And then, of course, there's plan B, which is to just forget that and just put in all new caps, and who cares? But at least I thought I would make an attempt to do something a little bit different this time around. That's it for now. Let me know what y'all think. Thanks for watching.